Today is April 26th, 2018. My name is Andrew Konstans, and I am here interviewing Ira Terrell for the Black History Project at SMU. Thank you for being here, Mr. Terrell.
Thank you for having me.
Alrighty, let's get started. So when and where were you born?
Born in Dallas, Texas, way back in 1954, June 19th to be exact. They call it Juneteenth these days, but June 19th.
And who were your parents and what were they like?
Ira Terrell and Jesse Terrell, and couldn't have had better parents. They led by example, stern, but not mean. You knew what they were thinking. You didn't have to read between the lines. And the fact that they were there for us, it was never a situation where we had, where was mom, where was dad. You know, they worked hard, very loving, and like I said, I couldn't have had better parents.
What about your siblings?
I'm the youngest of five. One brother, Michael, that was actually here at SMU a year before I was. He's deceased now. Got his master's in music. So during my time here at SMU, I always had support from him. Obviously I had support from my parents, both being from Dallas, and even an older brother. I have an older brother that's 72, and then two older sisters, and then again my brother Michael. So I'm the youngest of five.
Alrighty, and when you grew up in your neighborhood, was it segregated or was it desegregated, especially coming from Dallas in the South? Can you tell me about that experience growing up?
We were in the hood. We grew up in the hood, but and you knew everybody. You know, back in the day, you're talking about back in the late 50s, early 60s, that's when people left their doors unlocked, left their car doors unlocked. Everybody knew everybody. You hung out at their house, they hung out at our house. We had a basketball goal on the back that everybody came and shot. We had a pecan tree that everybody came and raided the pecan tree all the time, but it was just really fun. It was called Sunny South Dallas, over off of a street called Bear Street. We lived on Anderson Street, and it's amazing. Every now and then I just say, let me just drive down that street. The house I grew up in is not standing. There's just a lot right there, but there are about 2 or 3 families, believe it or not, that are still there on that street. But we had fun. You play all day and come in and collapse, and if it was the summertime, you could do it all over again.
So I know you said you had a basketball goal out there, so you were always interested in basketball from an early age, or was that something that developed more in middle school and high school?
It developed more in middle school, but we had one in the back because all the older kids would come and play because it was a pretty good basketball goal. And backboard, it was not fiberglass, forget about that, but it was a good basketball goal, and the older middle school and high schoolers would come out because it was a 2-car garage, and so if the cars weren't there, then you had room to play. And I was interested, but I was just interested in playing. I was growing up. At that point, I was, we didn't leave that house to move to another part of Dallas until I was 10 years old, so I obviously wasn't very good at that age. I was just interested in climbing trees, playing with the dog, shooting marbles, just having fun.
Well, also I know during that time the Vietnam War was going on around the time, I guess you were 9 or 10. How was that like growing up during that time, especially in the area that you were in?
Well, again, that part was pretty young, but you mentioned that my oldest brother, Jesse, he actually went to Vietnam. And very trying times because you never know, that's a war. One of my sisters, her husband also was in the Marines, he went to Vietnam. My other sister, her husband was in the Army, he went to Vietnam. So fortunately, all 3 of them came back. But you just never know when you hear things. Again, it wasn't like social media is now where you hear everything about everybody. But you knew there was a war going on the other side of the world. You didn't know what it was about, but you knew there were guns, there were bombs, there were all sorts of things. And I knew my brother and I didn't know my brother-in-law at the time, but I knew my brother was over there. So it was I was concerned. We all were concerned. And I'll never forget the time we were having an event at my church, and my mother was coming to pick us up, and she was blowing the horn coming down the street saying, Jesse's home, Jesse's home. So they had finally come back from overseas. So that was but it's amazing how certain things you remember 30, 40, 50 years later, but I still remember that day.
Do you know what year he left and what year he came back?
No, he graduated high school in '62. He did 1 year of college, and then he joined the Marines. So somewhere between '63 and '67, because he was there doing that those 4 years. That's when he was in the Marines.
And how often did you hear from him? Like, did he write you?
Didn't necessarily write me. I'm assuming he wrote my parents. Again, I was pretty young at that time. I mean, I was born in '54, so '63 I was just 9. I was still just a growing spurt, just having fun. But again, like I said, I knew he was there.
So during your middle school years, you said you became more formative into basketball. Did you join the school team in the middle school? And did they have that, and what was that like?
I did. 7th grade, we had, back then, unlike now, middle school was, they call it junior high, 7th, 8th, and 9th. Now it's like 6th, 7th, 8th, I believe it is. But I did play in the 7th grade, and I thought I was good. But a guy by the name of Willard Jackson kind of took me under his wing. He was our coach, and he spent a lot of time with me, just a lot of time with me, even after everybody was had gone. And he let my parents know that he was going to spend some time with me after practice, just working on me. I guess he saw something I didn't even see in myself. So I could see the improvement. And then 8th and 9th grade, I was good enough to play on the 9th grade team. We had a good team, a very competitive team. I even tried to play a little football, believe it or not. I was a string bean, but all my buddies were playing football, so hey, I'll go out and play football. I can catch. I don't like the licks. I didn't like going over the middle, giving up my ribs, but I did play football and ran track. So I was just an athlete. But I took it, and since I was getting better, I wanted to continue to let that be my path, and keep my grades up. Wasn't a great student. I was a good student, but I knew I could play basketball, and we had a good team. We really had a good team, very competitive team. So that in itself just kind of kept me motivated.
So going into high school, did you immediately start playing for the varsity team, I guess your sophomore year, or did you have to work your way up there?
Fortunately, I was able to start right away. I always like to say, even if I would have been there in the 9th grade, I probably wouldn't have started because they had a pretty good team then, but I would have gotten playing time. But once I got to Roosevelt High School, I was an immediate starter, and I started every game my sophomore, junior, and senior year. The coach, great guy, hard worker, no BS. I mean, you come to practice, and the thing I liked about that, he instilled in us discipline every day of basketball season. Not every other day, not 4 days out of 5. We had a meeting in his classroom. He was a biology teacher. So his thing was, you have no reason to be late for your first period class because you've been here an hour before school started. And that was every day. And that led to just more discipline. He lived right next door to the pastor of my church. So they would talk over the fence back and forth. So I always tell people, I knew I had good hookups. I mean, my pastor lives right next door to my coach. But I did start, and we had a lot of success my sophomore year, a little bit more my junior year, and fortunately, my senior year, we were able to win the state championship.
So when did playing basketball in college start to become, I guess, a dream or a thought of yours, especially since you started sophomore year? Did your coach or your family encourage you in that?
They didn't have to do much encouraging. Their encouraging came from, it's more than basketball. You cannot just play and think that's going to get you into the school. It's a little more difficult to get in now than it was back then, but my SAT wasn't that good, my ACT wasn't that good, but I was able to get in. Once I got that first letter from a school, I just thought I was it. I got a letter, I think it was from OU, Oklahoma University, and then a few more, and by the time I got to be the end of my junior year, they were coming, so many were coming at that time, I just stopped opening them, but I knew I was growing. I was still skinny, but I still had a lot of interest in me to go to a school, and everybody wanted me, and I was a little cocky with it, but at the same time, I'm humble. And I just realized, I was fortunate, I was blessed to have the ability that I have, the support that I have, both from my parents, my church, my coach. So I knew I had a goal, You know, when I did research papers, they were on Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, they were on Bill Russell, they were on Wilt Chamberlain, guys that I eventually got a chance to meet as I got older. So definitely that was the motivation to play in Madison Square Garden, play in the Boston Garden, places like that. So it's just stay focused, stay on track, and perhaps the opportunity would present itself.
So when you were going through the recruiting process, what made you end up choosing SMU? I know you said you had a brother there, and did that have anything to do with it?
Not much that he did. My parents did more recruiting than anything because they wanted me to stay close. I did have the opportunity to play pretty much anywhere in the country. Some people look at me like I've lost my mind when I tell them I could have played for John Wooden at UCLA. That was right in the middle of their 88-game winning streak. It crossed my mind occasionally, crossed my mind quite a bit. But like I tell people, I did 3 of the 4 things that I wanted to do. I wanted to have a good career, which obviously I did here at SMU. I wanted to graduate. I wanted to play in the NBA. I wanted to win championships. I did all 3. I did 3 of the 4. We just didn't win championships. So going to UCLA, that's the first year freshmen could. That's the first year a freshman could play varsity. I felt like I could have played, unlike coming to SMU where I started my first game and scored 28 points. I probably wouldn't have started at UCLA. How that would have handled me mentally, I don't know, because as I said, I was a stud. I could play, but millions of guys can play basketball. UCLA was in the middle of an 88-game winning streak. Obviously, they had some pretty good players too. Bill Walton, Jamal Wilkes, those guys. So how would I have handled that being, 1,500 miles away from home, not playing, or not playing very much? Maybe you just get depressed or you want to come back home and all of this. But again, I did pretty much what I wanted to do, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't cross my mind playing for John Wooden. Sitting in his office talking to him, and I'll never forget him saying, he said, look around my office. Every time they were on the front of Sports Illustrated, he had it laminated on a plaque, and it must have been 25 of them around there. So that's pretty impressive. He didn't have to say anything more. But and I got to meet Wilt Chamberlain as a 17-year-old senior. So my eyes are like this big, I'm like, I'm in Wilt Chamberlain's house. I talked to John Wooden this afternoon. Bill Walton the other day. But that was the recruiting process. But coming to SMU, we had 2 players. They were co-champs the year before, my senior year in high school. They had 2 players returning that were all conference players. If I decided to come here, there was another guy from New Orleans that was 6'10", 6'11", that was a first-team All-State that came. And then the guy that I admired growing up here locally, a guy by the name of Sammy Hervey. He's deceased now. To me, Sammy had as much talent as any one person I've seen. Here's a guy that averaged 41 points a game as a junior in high school. I saw it. I didn't, because I was still in middle school. My sophomore year, I had to play against him. I tried to guard him. He averaged 37 a game as a senior. He decided to come to SMU. So we've got 2 returning lettermen 2 returning all-conference players from a co-championship team, the guy from New Orleans coming in, Sammy coming in, and myself. On paper, it looked good. Unfortunately, it didn't work out because we just had too much dissension. Bob Pruitt, who obviously spent a lot of time here on campus, a former coach, great man, but he had too much talent. He tried to be everybody's friend. And somewhat it has to, you have to put your egos aside if you want to have some success. Everybody picked us to win the championship, and we won 10 games that year and lost 15. So it was a lot of dissension, but I don't regret the fact that I came here. I really don't. And you just never know what's going to happen if you're somewhere else, even as far as Houston or Louisville, or not to say go to California. There were a lot of things going on in California. I'm 17 years old. I haven't been exposed. I haven't left South Dallas. I haven't left Oak Cliff. And now all of a sudden I'm in Westwood, hanging out with Bill Walton, Hugh Hefner, Wilt Chamberlain, John Wooden. Maybe I handle it, maybe I don't. But locally here, you got the support. Still went to church every Sunday morning, even though we may have played the game the night before, so it wasn't, not a bad deal. It worked out okay.
Can you tell me a little bit more about coming to SMU, that program that you were in, like your coaches and your teammates and that dynamic? I know you said you had some dissension. Can you expand a little more about how that worked, especially your freshman year? Everybody
wanted the ball, and it was only one ball. That was basically it, because again, when you've had some success the year before, new guys coming in, now it wasn't that we didn't get along. We got along until the game started and everybody wanted the ball. And Sammy, the guy that averaged 41 points in high school, he was the leading scorer, and he should have been. He was the best player. I'm the little skinny freshman that comes in. As a freshman, I averaged 19 points and 14 rebounds as a freshman. That's why I never understand why people say, oh, he got a double-double. It's not hard to get a double-double. It's really not if you're playing, okay? So Sammy's averaging 22, 23 points a game. I'm averaging 19. I haven't said anything about the other guys that were there before us. So here comes the dissension, Every time there's an interview, they're coming to me and Sammy. They're not going to the other guys. So, and win or lose, they're talking to us. Unfortunately, we didn't win. We played competitively, but we just didn't win. And unfortunately, we ended up with a 10 and 15 record. So you look at a team like Kentucky, they get the best talent, or Duke, or North Carolina, or Kansas, they get McDonald's All-Americans. You have to check your ego at the door. We didn't do this. Coach Pruitt didn't crack the whip. Great man. I just didn't think he was tough enough on us. I'm coming from the school, my high school, everybody did the same thing. I was the captain at high school, but I had to lead by example, and I had no problem doing that. I worked as hard as anybody else. But it wasn't about give me the ball, give me the ball. We shared the ball, we won, we beat a bunch of teams, we won a state championship. I come here with all the talent in the world, it didn't mesh. It never did work, and unfortunately I was as disappointed as anybody else, because I was looking forward to us having a very good team, and it just didn't materialize. And they ended up firing the two coaches that recruited me, and brought in another one. And we were competitive, but we still, after that year, we really didn't recruit very good talent over my next 3 years. We just didn't, and that was one thing that was very disappointing, that we didn't continue. When I look back at some of my teammates over the next 3 years, it was sad. And I'm not gonna call any names, but you can look in the media guide. It's just, we just didn't have a whole lot of really good talent my next 3 years. We'd play tough, play a team tough, and find a way to lose. So that's kind of the way it was, but overall, the time here was fun.
So then can you talk to me a little bit on the court, especially about, some of the rivalries you had and some of those other schools, and did you face, any discrimination during that time, especially on the court while you were playing?
I really don't recall any of the rivalries were exactly what they were. I mean, TCU across the street there, Waco, Arkansas, obviously Texas, and I'm sure there were some things said, but I'm the type of person, when I'm in between the lines, that's my spot. I don't hear it. It could be during the timeout, it could be during the free throw, it can be at the beginning of a jump ball. I'm sure some things were said. Thinking back, I can't think of any one particular time where someone said something out of line. If I had to go back and listen to all the audio, I'm sure there was. But again, I just didn't hear it. I got a guy that's bigger than me, stronger than me, probably jumps as high as I do. That's who I'm trying to stop. I can't worry about the guy that went to happy hour and got drunk and it's got some things to say. I'm 6'8", 205 pounds. Rick Bullock from Texas Tech was 6'9", 250, and I'm trying to guard him. Sonny Parker, whose son plays for the Milwaukee Bucks, Jabari Parker, he was a #1 draft choice for the Golden State Warriors. I'm trying to guard Sonny Parker. I don't have time to worry about what's going on at A&M in the stands. So again, it probably was some things said, but again, it didn't affect me. If anything, and we're talking, this is 2018, we're talking back 1972, 73, it probably was. If anything, it probably just motivated me more. I love playing on the road, because as long as nobody crossed that line, and when I say physically cross that line and get on the court, I'm okay. And even if you say anything, as long as you stay off that line, stay behind that line, it's 5 against 5. I have to deal with my man. I don't have to deal with that idiot that's in the stands. But I'm almost sure, we're talking 1972, 73, I'm sure some things were said.
Do you think that any of the refs or opposing coaches or players ever said anything to you or discriminated against you like that, especially since you were playing like those TCUs in Texas and A&Ms?
I don't recall. I really don't recall. And we had friends on other teams, so I'm almost thinking if something was said out of line, I'm almost thinking that someone would have said something physically to me and just say, hey, by the way, coach said this about you. That never came up as well. 'Cause some coaches, as they say, win at all costs. And if they think they can get to you mentally, they try. If they think they can get to you physically, they try. You want to win, just like we want to win. And even playing here at Moody, all the football players used to sit just behind the opposing team's bench. You might want to talk to some of the football players. I'm sure some things came out of their mouths against the other teams. And to me, that's just a good rivalry, home court advantage. Use it to your advantage. But like I said, I didn't have a problem playing at A&M. I didn't have a problem playing at Texas Tech or Baylor or any of those places. It's time to play. Let's throw it up and go for it.
Awesome. Well, I guess shifting gears a little bit and talking about your academics and your social life here at SMU, what was that like and what degree did you pursue, especially since freshman year, and how did that impact playing basketball and balancing the two?
I got my degree in business administration. It was tough, number one, because I studied, but I just didn't like to study. I did go to class. I'm not one of those people that, I played a game last night, I didn't get to bed till 1 o'clock, I got an 8 o'clock class. I did get to class. The tough part about it, you're sore, you've been playing. Sometime if you took a bus from Waco or Austin, you didn't get in to maybe 1:30 to 2 o'clock or later, and then you had to class. I never forgot, it never crossed my mind that it wasn't student athlete first, okay? I've always told people, I'm gonna get my degree. I didn't just show up here to play for 3-4 years and then leave and I'm just a sophomore, okay? I always said if I didn't get my degree in 4 years, I wanna be close enough where I could get it that summer following my senior year. I was able to get it in 4 years. So the atmosphere around the campus was fine. I didn't do a whole lot of partying, but I did go out occasionally and hang out with the guys and girls at the bar. Mainly, I just like to socialize, but not the social butterfly. And because you just don't have as much time. You don't have as much energy, I know some people that can go out and party and come in at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, get up and go to class, or they'll blow it off. I didn't want to be that person, okay? Not saying that I was the most talkative person doing the lectures in class, but at least the instructors knew me. They knew me by face, they knew me by name, so they couldn't say, who is that guy? I haven't seen him. So I wanted to make sure that they knew who I was, what I was about, and I stayed on target to graduate. I did get a little lazy after my freshman year because, my name is in the newspaper and they're talking about this great skinny freshman that took over the Southwest Conference, and my grades suffered a little bit. So I had to go back and do some summer classes to bring my GPA up, because the last thing I wanted to do was end up on probation. That just was not an option for me, nor was there an option for my parents. And I would have let too many people down. I had a great support staff, my sisters, my older brothers, my family, everybody did. And I wanted to make sure that I did what I needed to do. When I talk about my family, I can almost take something from each one of them. I recall first time I was ever interviewed in high school, and Vern Lundquist, who's still with CBS, seemed like he's been there 1,000 years. He came to my high school, Vern Lundquist. He interviewed me, and everything was, back in the day, well, if we just, every other word was well, we just had a And so when I got home and my sister saw that interview, she grabbed me and she said, "You're too good. You're gonna be good. There's gonna be a microphone in front of your face a whole lot. You need to learn how to talk." And I never forget that. Even if you got to go in the bathroom and practice in the mirror, someone's going to be having a microphone in front of your face. Don't ever do that again. Because they showed some highlights of me dunking and doing all of that. That's not the issue, but just the way it came across. And I said, okay, I can use that. I get it. But so again, I had goals. I wanted to play in the NBA. I wanted to have a great career. I wanted to graduate and have fun. I had a couple of co-ed girlfriends around here. I played around a little bit. I thought I was a stud. So got in trouble a couple of times because I said something to the wrong one. I thought I said it to the different one. So I'm not gonna lie, I did that. So, but other than that, it was just, my time here was good. My time here was good. I really had no issues whatsoever, and hung out with a lot of football players and some of the basketball players, and just, went through what I needed to go through. And in 4 years, it was time to move on.
So coming here in 72, correct, it's just 3 years after the Blacks, which is the BLACS protest in the president's office in 69. What was the environment like, I guess, on campus your first, couple days? And how many Black students did you see around? Because I know one of the big issues is they wanted to be more represented, and they wanted to have more Black students here.
You didn't see many. It's my understanding, I think it was said that we may have had 50 total, and probably 30 were athletes. So that tells you what you need to know right there. Again, I like the atmosphere. We hung out. They used to have a little building back here, the apartments that were the Blacks, BLAACS, is it BLAACS? CKS, yes. So, and a lot of them lived back there. So, but it wasn't a situation where we just hung out, we go to the student union and we just gonna sit over here because everybody's African American. We mixed and mingle. I only had 2 other African Americans on the basketball team my freshman year. So, it couldn't be a situation where I'm just gonna stay with one group. Even though I went to an all-Black school, my transition here really wasn't very difficult at all. I look at a person. If you're gonna act a fool, I don't care what color you are, I probably won't hang out with you. There are people I went to high school with that I just don't socialize with. Okay, and they're African American as well. So again, I enjoyed my time here. I had no issues. Like I say, I dated several out of my race, and no one said anything. Let's put it this way, no one said anything to me, and if you've got a problem with it, that's your problem. I don't have a problem. I'm not gonna get into your area. I'm not gonna, I don't want your spouse or your girlfriend to cheat with me. That's your girlfriend, There's enough to go around last time I checked, so, and that's the way I look at it. But, the time out here, I think I may have seen one major issue, and it really didn't involve me. It was just, someone making some racial statements to, a couple of the football players. It didn't really escalate to any violence, but it was, it was just some ugly things being said.
Can you tell me a little more about that and what your experience with that was then?
Well, again, I didn't see it specifically. It was something that I'd heard about, but it was a good friend of mine that it was said something to his girlfriend, and unfortunately, it came across as being racial, as being racist, and I don't want to call the guy's name because I still see him occasionally, and he's a very successful person right now. But, I'd be lying if I said when I see him that a little bit doesn't still remember what happened back in the mid-'70s back here, And again, he was drunk. you say things. We've all been part of that liquid courage. You know, I'm sure he probably feels bad saying it. The person he said it to moved on. You know, I don't know how they feel about it, but they moved on. It didn't affected them for a little while. Sure, hurt by it, but they moved on, and very successful right now. So he's successful on his side, she's successful on her side, and all is basically forgotten. But that's about the only time that I can recall. I would think there was probably some other things going on that I just wasn't privy to. And if I don't know it, I just don't know it. Would I have jumped in the middle of it? I would have maybe tried to, downplay it. Not necessarily downplay it, but keep it from snowballing, if I could. As just the kind of person I was, especially if it was someone that I cared about. Let's just try to do this differently rather than let it get out of control. Because usually when it gets out of control, some or someone will end up hurt, and that's not what we're about.
So you personally never got discriminated against your time here?
I never did. I really never did. Again, I'm sure me walking across campus with a very nice brunette girl with long legs, probably somebody thought to say something or probably didn't like it, but they didn't say anything to me, and obviously they didn't say anything to her, because if they'd said something to her, it would have gotten back to me. So, or maybe they said something to her and she didn't want me to know about it, and because it would. Now, am I a violent person? Absolutely not. But I probably would have confronted someone had they said something to someone that I care about me, but it never did happen. And I'm almost sure it had to have happened other times with other people, just not me personally.
So since you've had a seemingly overall positive experience coming from SMU, can you tell me some of the best memories that you've had in the 4 years that you spent here?
Winning. We didn't win enough. That was one thing, but they actually had my senior year, they had an Ira Terrell Day. And I was like shocked, because normally they have those after you're already deceased. So I remember saying something to the fact of, thank you for doing this for me, that I can actually respond because I'm still living. So that was one thing. Obviously my basketball career, I couldn't have, other than winning championships, was something that was just so exciting. Graduating now. After 4 years going up and down the court at Moody Coliseum, the last thing I wanted to do was sit through a long ceremony, but my parents wanted to watch it, and it was at Moody. I'm like, now my girlfriend at the time, she graduated from Texas Southern that Saturday. Our graduation was hers was on Saturday, mine was on Sunday, so we're in Houston. So then we drive back up here after hers. Now, first of all, hers was in Houston outdoors. It's humid. We're talking June, okay? It's hot. It's like real hot. So by then, I'm basically, I'll never forget, I say, Mom, I'm gonna graduate. Dad, I'm gonna graduate. They're gonna mail me my diploma. No, we wanna watch you grow across the stage. I spent 4 years up and down the court at Moody Coliseum. We want to, okay, all right, you win this one. So I just said, okay, walking across the stage. When I get that diploma, I'm not coming back to my seat. So I'm gonna make that left turn and go through the locker room, I'm done. So if you want that picture, you better be right there at the end of those steps, because that's it. So they were okay with that. But I did, just meeting some really, really cool people here, some great people that I still keep in contact with. Some that have already left SMU, but they still follow the team. The David Millers of the world, Randall Goss, people like that, the guys that I've known forever. Mike Jakar, one of my classmates. It's just the list goes on and on. It really does. And if you could change anything, maybe, probably not. Because you don't know what's on the other side of the fence. As they say, the grass is not always greener on the other side. So that's kind of where we are on that, just having a lot of fun, good memories. I just would have loved to have won more championships, or won at least one championship while I was here.
So after you graduated, up till now, have you made attempts to stay involved with SMU? I know in 2012 you were inducted into the Athletic Hall of Fame, and then in 2017 there was the Ira Terrell Scholarship that was given. And so what attempts have you made, I guess, to stay close to the university and involved in what's going on here?
Well, I've always stayed close. I'm not like a lot of the people that once Larry Brown got here and we got the new arena refurbished, that everybody wanted to show up. I'd be there when there's 1,200 people. There are times I could lay down on the front row of on the first row down there where all the heavy donors are and George W. and not touch anybody. I could lay across 5 seats, but now everybody wants to be part of it. But I've always, I did radio, I did TV. The first time I ever worked with a television game, I worked with Brad Sham. This was way back in like '85. So I've had a chance to work with a lot of people doing the games. So I've stayed close, but it was, Sonny Allen was my coach. Shortly thereafter it was Dave Bliss. Shortly thereafter it was John Shoemate, who I actually played against when I was with the Suns, and he was with the Buffalo Braves. Who came after him? Mike DeMent, Jimmy Tubb. So again, I've stayed close to the program. I mean, that's what I enjoy coming. I enjoy watching the guys come and go, and it just makes me feel older and older and older. You see them walk on campus for the first time, and then next thing you know, they graduated. I mean, 4 years goes by really fast. So in this case, just like 42 years have gone by fast since I graduated in '76. So, but I've always stayed close, and I get emotional at times when it's senior night, because I can remember the time I played my last game here. Unfortunately, we got beat by Arkansas. Sidney Moncrief, Ron Brewer, they beat us in the first ever Southwest Conference tournament, played right here at Moody, and we lost in the quarterfinals. That was one of the most difficult days of my life, walking up that tunnel, not being able to play anymore, and 4 of the teams are playing where I played the last 4 years. So that was difficult to take. But yes, I love keeping up with these guys. I'm a little disappointed that Shake Milton is not coming back next year, but you can't really argue that. If you have an opportunity to go make 7 figures, you're crazy not to, because you never know when that injury might come and you might never get a chance to. But I love watching the team play. I keep up with the girls, obviously not as much with the guys. Hope Travis Mays does exceptionally well. We might have to put together a WNBA team to beat UConn's women, because they are just so good. But I like what Travis Mays is doing with the girls, and Coach Jankovic. We got to bring it this year, because it's not going to be easy. We're losing some more players, just like we lost 2 or 3 last year and 2 or 3 the year before that. You have to get some players that can play the game, because that's what people want to see.
So take me through the process of declaring for the NBA draft, and when that became a thought in your mind after graduating or before graduating, you knew that you wanted to play in the NBA.
Well, at that point, it wasn't a matter of declaring. It's just if you're good enough, you'll get the phone call. Now back then, I think right now there's 30 teams. I want to say we may have had 16 teams back then. So I knew I was going to play. Well, I knew I was going to have the opportunity to play. I had gone to the Pan American Games. I didn't make the team, but it was good exposure because all the teams were represented there, coaches, general managers. I tried out for the Olympics. Didn't make it, but once again, the exposure was there. So I knew at that time they weren't reaching out like they do now, bringing you in and seeing how high you can jump, how fast you can run, how many shots you can make in a particular time. But I was definitely on the radar, and because I played well, and played well against some very good players all throughout my career, even going back to my freshman year, I played against 3 number 1 draft choices and scored well against all of them. They scored well against me too, but I'm the skinny freshman. So from the freshman team freshman year all the way up, I've just tried to consistently get better. Didn't have any idea where I thought I would go. You never know at that point, because this was the year that the NBA and the ABA merged. The year before, if it had been the ABA, if the ABA offered more money, I'd already made that decision. The money is green. I want to play, I want to make money. But at that time they merged, so you only had one choice. And Phoenix Suns called me. I was the 45th player picked. Now, that was in the middle of the 3rd round. If you're the 45th player picked now, you're in the middle of the 2nd round, because they only have 2 rounds. So I was excited, I was in my parents' house, and everybody said, I don't want to be around anybody. So everybody found something else to do. And really, they never really called me initially. Somebody else called me that heard it. So a friend of mine, oh, you're going to Phoenix. So how do you know? There was no social media back then. There wasn't like a crawl at the bottom like ESPN or Fox Sports or none of that. So that happened, and it worked out well.
So they didn't call you, or?
They eventually did, after somebody else called me and told me. And I don't know how they even heard it. Maybe they just heard it on, there was no ESPN back then. So I have no idea. To this day, I don't know if I even ask, how did you know? But that's what happened, and that was in June. And then shortly thereafter, I flew out, met the team, met the owner, met the general manager. John McMillan was the coach. And this was the year right after they had almost won the world championship against Boston in that triple overtime game. And enjoyed Phoenix. Did enjoy Phoenix in the summer, because Phoenix is hot. I mean, it's when you see 100 degrees, 105 degrees, and you're watching the 10 o'clock news, it's just a mental thing. It's too hot. It's nighttime. So, but I went out. We played the summer league, and that was just adjusting to the NBA, adjusting to the pace. Even though we were playing against other rookies and first-year guys, I got a chance to play a lot, just get away. First time I had ever been away from home, because I grew up here, went to school here for 4 years, so I'm 22 years old in Phoenix. But again, a good transition. Some good teammates. Gar Hurd, that's a good friend of mine. He's getting ready to turn 70 years old next week. He kind of took me under his wing. And but Phoenix was a great place to be once I did find out that I made the team, because there was no giving. The NBA is a cutthroat league. And I had played against a guy by the name of Al Fleming from the University of Arizona, 6'9", 230 pounds. They loved him. He was like their second son. He complained because he wasn't getting enough money. Well, you don't get a choice. You either play for the Suns for what they want to pay you, or you don't play. He ended up getting a few extra dollars as a signing bonus. He was the first player cut. That told me right then, this is a business. And he could play, but the fact that he was able to get a few more dollars up front, he never did get to his salary, because they cut him right away, and I was able to play my rookie year and have a pretty good rookie year.
Can you talk me through some of the highlights of your NBA career?
First game, well, I guess after I made the team, we had a 6-game road trip. So, when you're a rookie, you get all the early stuff. You get the preseason games, because all the veterans aren't playing. They're just sitting out waiting on the season. So I'm playing a lot, but I'm trying to make the team, so I had no problem. I wanted to play. First week, I think we played Milwaukee, New Orleans, went to Houston and San Antonio, Denver. It told me right then, these guys are really good. These guys are really good. They can play every night. And I guess the most disappointing part was when we made the Texas trip, because we went to Houston. Of course, all my friends, they drove down from Dallas. San Antonio, all my friends. I didn't play at all. I'm like, I played all these preseason minutes, but this was a real world now. So that part was, I'm earning money. You know, I'm not a millionaire because the minimum salary back then was $30,000. Of course, the minimum now is $815,000. It's crazy money. But I was disappointed because I wanted to play in front of my friends in Texas. You know, I'm in the NBA, okay? I'm not at Roosevelt High School, I'm not at SMU, I'm in the NBA. Played against Pistol Pete Maravich on that first road trip. Played against David Thompson on that first road trip. Played against Moses Malone on that first road trip. Played against George Gervin on that first road trip. Well, I said I played. The team played. Somebody else played. I didn't get to guard Moses, but again, Gar Hurd, good friend of mine, just you know, this is how it is. Just wait your turn. You'll get a shot. You'll get a shot. And then all of a sudden, players started getting hurt. I ended up 5th on the team in playing in minutes by the time the season ended. Now, our team was not very good that year. We went last in our division, but I got to play more than I really wanted to. I'm used to playing 25, 27 games, and now I'm playing 82. And I'm not playing 82 against East Texas State or somebody that's not very good. We're playing against the best in the world. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Julius Irving, George McGinnis, these guys, Wes Unseld, you know, and Thanksgiving Day, we played the Washington Bullets at that time. I had to play against Wes Unseld. Wes, it's like a $2 cab ride trying to get around that guy. I mean, the guy is this wide, and he drugged me all up and down the court on national TV on Thanksgiving. All my boys saw that one, you know. I got phone calls that day, you know, and they beat us at our place. But it was fun playing, doing what you want to do, doing what kids would give their right arm to get to do. First time we played against Kareem, back in the Fabulous Forum. I mean, that's when your eyes get really big, you know. Walter Matthau sitting there. Jack Nicholson had the same seats 40 years ago. Jack and I sit and talk on the bench when I go to the bench. He knows everybody. He knows every player. So things like that. Like I said, I mentioned Pistol Pete playing in Madison Square Garden against Walt Frazier. Those guys. It's every kid's dream. It's every kid's dream getting a chance to play, and when it's over, you know, the main thing you want to make sure is that you don't get caught up in the extracurricular, because it's always extracurricular out there. You know, you check into a hotel, your message light is blinking. They don't know well, I didn't realize at the time, they know your schedule when you get it. When I say they, the groupies, they know your schedule. So now all of a sudden you got a message, or you go to the bar at the hotel and there are some pretty ladies hanging around the bar. So those are some, you could call them pluses. There's also some roadblocks. Those are some things you want to necessarily be careful with, because it can end up being ugly. Or you can have a little fun and that's the end of it. So I'm sure every player in the NBA can probably write a book or two about some of the things they did or probably shouldn't have done, but they had fun doing it.
Can you tell me what was your toughest matchup you've ever had to play in the NBA?
Take a number. Because again, it could have been Julius Irving. I mean, he jumps over your head. I mentioned Wes Unseld. Because sometimes it's we didn't have a real big team as my rookie year with the Suns. So I had to play power forward. I weighed all of 205 pounds, 210 pounds. So one day I might have to guard Julius Irving. One day I might have to guard, John Drew was a real good player from Atlanta. You know, extremely quick, only about 6'6". But another time, we play in Portland, I might have to guard Maurice Lucas. Now, he was the original enforcer. 6'9", about 240, 250 pounds, you know, he became the greatest friend a person could have. unfortunately, he passed due to cancer. But so I could. It's almost saying pick the top 10 players ever to play in the NBA. You can pick 10, somebody else can pick 10, somebody else can pick 10. I can pick fourth, and I can still have 10 very good players. But if I had to pick any, I would say a kind of cross between having to play Dr. J and having to play Maurice Lucas or Wes Unseld, because you've got the speed, quickness, know-how, unbelievable talent, high wire act, or you're in a fight all night because you're playing against somebody known as the enforcer that's big, tough, rugged, and knows how to use it, and they let them get away with stuff. Back then, the game was a lot more physical. Now, not to say that it's not physical now, but it was a lot more physical then. And they didn't go to the scores table to look to see if somebody got hit in the head. You got hit in the head. You got elbowed, you got kicked, there was a fight. If there was a fight, there was, you don't necessarily get kicked out. They just call a couple of technicals and let you keep playing. I made the mistake one time of trying to we were playing Indiana, and there was a fight right in front of Indiana's bench. Well, I tried to grab the guy that was jumping on my guy. And I think his name was, last name was Brown. I can't think of the first name right now. But he grabbed me and he said, "Rookie, don't ever grab somebody in front of the other's bench. Don't ever do that. You will get hurt really bad." So I remember that like it happened yesterday. Don't ever grab somebody. You right in front of our bench. It's 10 of us over here, and it's just you and a couple of your teammates. So, it was a pretty good thing. Some things you remember, and that's one that I do remember. But just being able to travel, stay in the nice hotels. We didn't fly charter, but we flew first class. So we get the first class seats, and of course everybody's getting on the plane. Oh, that's the Phoenix Suns, or that's this. That's kind of cool, But that's what you live for. That's what you worked for in order to get there.
So after your career in the NBA, you said you were in TV for a while. How did that start? Or TV and radio, so how did you get into there?
Just following SMU, and mentioned Brad Sham. Brad Sham used to do the game. Actually, before Brad, it was Frank Gleber. Frank Gleber with that great voice of his on CBS Sports. I think his son actually played for the Mustangs after the death penalty. But I'm at a game, and I had met Brad somewhere, and he just asked me to sit down and grab the microphone. Well, I said, "Brad, I'm here to do the game. I don't want to do it. Just grab the microphone. Let's have some fun with it." It was during halftime. And he had interviewed me at halftime, I believe. And then he just said, "Okay, why don't you do the second half?" "Brad, I don't really want to do this. I haven't." So I kind of stumbled through the second half. SMU was playing Baylor. And I guess it went over well enough where they ended up asking us to do not a series of games, but they scheduled some games for us to do. I think it was on Channel 39 or Channel 21, one of the independent stations. And that's kind of how I got into it. I tell Brad all the time, you got me into this crazy business, but it opened some doors. I mean, one year we had a 6-game series or 6-game schedule, and then we got another 8 games. Eventually I started doing some radio on for SMU basketball, and those sort of things just happen. Once somebody hears you, you don't have to be able to slam dunk a basketball. If you can talk and you know what to say, how to say it, and be quiet and give it back to the play-by-play guy and let him do it, and then he throws it back to you. If someone hears it and sees it, that's how things happen. And you can do that for a long time. And I ended up getting some more games on ESPN3. One time, this was amazing how this happened. We were playing Tennessee. SMU was playing Tennessee here in Dallas, and excuse me, the guy that does color for Tennessee, his wife went into labor. So they called our sports information guy, and they said, "Do you have anybody that could do color?" Because it was that last minute thing, and I ended up doing color for Tennessee basketball, which was kind of weird to do. But one thing I've never been was a homer. I call it the way I see it. Okay, I can't make you look good if you don't look good. If you're ugly, I can't make you look good. I'm sorry, I can't do it that way. And that's kind of how it happened, and I think that's why I've been doing it off and on since 1986. I've been doing it for a really long time. And when Gerald Sasser, who's the all-time lead scorer here at SMU, when he was playing and wasn't doing it well, I barbecued him. It was terrible. First person come up to me after the game, first two people come up to me after the game, his parents say, I like the way you do it. Now his parents say that, but some people think I'm too harsh. You're watching the game. I can't make it be any different. And if it's radio, you're listening, so you don't know really what's going on if you're listening, but you're watching the game. And not again, I didn't have to barbecue Jason too much, Gerald too much, but when it was going bad, I had to call it the way I saw it. And I'll never forget how his parents just, hey, I'm okay with it. We're okay. And we'll talk to him about that when he gets home. But you were right on time saying, what he should have been doing and what he shouldn't have been doing. That's why they want, someone does play-by-play, someone does color. One person says what happens, I was the person that says why it happened, or what should have happened, or what I think should have happened. You've seen Charles Barkley. He doesn't bite his tongue. Shaq doesn't bite his tongue. Some of these other guys, they don't bite their tongues, and they've been doing it a long time.
So did you only do it for SMU basketball mostly?
I've only done it for SMU. I would have loved to expanded my horizons, but I never did. But, probably won't happen at this stage in my life. If it does, I'll certainly, embrace it. I remember meeting James Brown from CBS Sports at a Maverick game, and I told him I was doing it. He said, do your dirty work, do the little things. It might not ever materialize, but don't be opposed to take the job that nobody else wants. So, and I always remember that. He was in Dallas last week, and I got to run into him, and we talked about that again. So, that's a tough job. Everybody thinks they can do it, but it's not that easy. One thing I remember about the very first game I ever did with Brad, not that radio interview, but when we started the next year. I forgot who we were playing. Some school, like one of the small schools out of the DC area. It was the Friday after Thanksgiving. Nobody was at the game because the kids were out of school. The Mavericks were playing the Chicago Bulls. So nobody was watching us. They were watching the Mavericks and Michael Jordan. And I was terrible. But fortunately, very few people saw it. Like my parents, they saw it, and a few other people. My girlfriend was at the game, so she didn't see it, but she was sitting there. So they think it's easy. Now, it becomes easier, but when you think you've got it, I've got all these cliches I'm going to use and what I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it. Well, first thing, I'm not used to somebody talking in my ear. The producer that's in the truck is talking in your ear. He's telling you this, telling you that. We come into a commercial, finish it up, 3 seconds to a commercial, 5 seconds to a commercial. Well, you're in the middle of a thought. You can't pause when he starts talking. You have to get it out there. I bet I paused about 15 times. Prior to that, I couldn't get the volume to work. So first I turn it up because the band is playing the fight song. I can't hear the play-by-play guy. So finally I turn it up loud enough where I can hear him and the band stops. So now I go deaf in this ear because it's so loud. So all these things, this is all the game one. And then of course, a very boring game. We win the game, but nobody's watching. I'm not used to getting ready to go to a commercial when I'm giving my analysis. So things like that. Fortunately, very few people watch the game. So I watched that tape one time in my life. I don't want to watch it ever again because it's bad. But you get better. You get used to doing what you need to do. And obviously, it ended up working out for me. If you've been doing something since the mid-'80s, the late 80s, and here it is 2018, you obviously have done something right.
So before that, how did you get back to Dallas after your career? Where did you end up, first of all, your last team you were on in the NBA?
Last team was the Portland Trail Blazers. I was unfortunately cut by the Suns. I went to play with the Jazz, played with Pistol Pete with that team in New Orleans. Elgin Baylor was our coach. They had a big trade where they sent 2 players from Phoenix. Once again, Phoenix haunts me because I've been cut by Phoenix, and then later on that year, Phoenix sends 2 players to New Orleans, 1 player back to Phoenix, where we're 1 player over the limit. To tell you once again, just how cutthroat it is. Now, we're doing our shoot around, at the Superdome that morning. So Truck Robinson was my teammate in New Orleans. He comes up to me and just said, I just got traded to Phoenix for Marty Burns and Ronnie Lee. Well, Ronnie Lee was my teammate my rookie year. I said, you dog, because Phoenix was in first place. We're in last place. New Orleans in last place. So he's getting ready to go to Phoenix to a championship, to a playoff team. So all that day, I never got a phone call. So it's game time, so I head to the Superdome. So now I'm starting to count. Let's see, Spencer Haywood, he's got a guaranteed. Aaron James has a guaranteed. Paul Griffin has a guaranteed. James Hardy has a guaranteed. Marty Burns is coming in, he's got a guaranteed. I don't have a guaranteed contract. We're one player over the limit. They sent one away, two came. It's 6:45. It's maybe 6:30. I go get tape. I'm getting ready to go out and warm up. I take a step toward the door. Elgin Baylor, who was our coach, and our general manager walks in. Our eyes meet. We knew exactly what was happening. I'm fully clothed, ready to go warm up. You warm up by yourself before everybody else comes out. And, well, we've got to let you go. You knew this all day. I didn't even have to come down here, so that just tells you just how tough it can be at times. You just don't know. So I just cut the tape off my foot, got dressed and left. Came back and watched the game. I just said, I'm not going to get caught up in it. It's a business. When I go to Portland, a guy by the name of Clement Johnson, he won a championship with the 76ers. He was living in Portland, playing for Portland. He got married the day I was picked up by Portland. I flew into Portland. A guy by the name of John McMillan that actually played with Wilt Chamberlain, very good player. They had put him up in a real nice 3-level condo in Lake Oswego, Oregon, with a car to use from one of the dealers. So he didn't have to pay rent, he didn't have to get a car. They tell him at Clement's wedding, we just signed Ira. You need to clean out that condo and leave the keys on the desk. At a wedding. I'm like, wow. So it's good, it's crazy, it's good, it's crazy. And you have your great days, your good days. I had some good games. I love playing in the Lakers because I played against Cassie Russell, and Cassie Russell wasn't a very good defensive player. He could score, but I could score on him too. So that was always fun. But getting back to Dallas, I actually went overseas and played ball in the Philippines. That was fun. Played over there from 80, 81 to 82. But once everything was done, it was just time to move on to what I need to do. Since you didn't make the millions, I got into the real estate business and did some work for Dr. Pepper. So I mentor middle school kids because those are the crazy ones. Those are the ones that are out of their minds. They think they know it all. So, but the bottom line is you think back of what you accomplished. I would have loved to play 10 or 15 years. I would have loved to play for the Mavericks. It didn't materialize. They were awful that first year. Maybe a few more people would have bought tickets had I been on the team, but I didn't get a chance to actually try out for the team. I thought I did, but they said because of my knee surgery that I'd had 4 years earlier, they wouldn't allow it. And the part was kind of disappointing because I even signed a waiver saying if there's anything wrong with my knee, you don't have to pay me a penny. But they chose to go the other route, so you move on. You really do move on. So when people see NBA, they see the good. They don't hear all the underlying stuff that goes on, but if you can make it, you got a great opportunity. And being a 63-year-old man, almost 64, the fact that because of all the screaming and begging, they finally decided to take care of the older guys with medical insurance, which is phenomenal. I mean, and a lot of that came from Chris Paul and LeBron James. We get free medical. That's huge. That is huge, because we all got something that's hurting. And if it ain't hurting now, just wait till tomorrow or wait till next week. Something will be hurting then. So, but I decided I can't think of any other place I would rather be than right here in Dallas. I mean, I don't necessarily need to live in California or Florida or New York, this is home. This is home.
So when you came back and you were still in contact with SMU, how quickly did you get back involved into just the campus environment?
Not so much the campus environment, pretty much just football and basketball. I don't know if, I know there's a lot going on campus, a lot of different organizations and whatnot, but my deal was just to kind of spend time with the basketball team, especially since I was doing radio and some TV. So that's what I did, and knew some of the coaches. I knew June Jones a little bit in football, but obviously playing against John Shoemate, Dave Bliss, all the basketball coaches, I wanted to do what I could, to help. If it meant helping to recruit. Now, right now, me being an alum with all the rules, it's very little I can do to help them recruit. I just really can't, because I would love to, but they don't allow it because of all the rules and all the interpretations of the rules. So what I do is just, if I get a chance to say hello to a guy at a basketball game or something, I do that and just let it go, because it's just so many rules. There's a guy playing here right now, Everett Ray. I played against his dad, Clifford Ray. Clifford Ray played in the NBA with the Golden State Warriors, won a championship with Rick Barry, won a championship as a coach with Boston. There are a couple of seats on the front row. Now, again, I know all the people that sit down there next to the former president and David Miller and the Mr. Brookshires and all of those. There are a couple of seats. I said, can Clifford come down here? Sure. Next thing I know, here come one of the officials. Not the basketball officials, but one of the SMU officials. If he sits down there, we're going to have to turn it in. It's a violation. I'm like, really? Not me. Now, his son is already here on campus playing that night, but because I guess they feel like that's giving them extra, he's already here. That's what I say when you talk about rules and interpretations and more interpretations of that interpretation. It's just crazy. So for that reason, you just have to be careful of what you say, who you say it to, when you say it, what you do, because it can be taken wrong. And I don't always agree, but they didn't ask my opinion.
Well, back when you were playing, were the rules a little more lax on that kind of stuff? And
yes and no. Well, they were lax. They were definitely lax. A lot of guys didn't have to go to class. I know, I won't call names, but I know for a fact the guy played 4 years of football, and I bet if you looked at his transcript, he's probably a sophomore. I think the last 2.5 years, I'm not sure he even checked out books, but he played all 4 years. And speaking of, things that didn't always go my way, my junior year. Now, again, I could have gone to UCLA. NCAA dug and dug and dug and tried to find this out. They found out about, well, why would a kid not go to UCLA and go to a football school that doesn't have much of a basketball program? So they found out about me receiving $50 from the assistant coach that eventually got fired. The NCAA took my junior and senior year away. I had to go to Washington, D.C. to appeal to get 1 year back. Over $50. So that was when I was a junior, so I'm 20 years old. So that's haunted me for all these years, $50. Now you and I and everybody else knows guys get that much for anything. They get 5 times that much, 10 times that much. But they took that, and I just said, okay, I'm not going to let that destroy me. Thank you for letting me have my senior year back. I came back home, went to practice every day, took the worst 3 guys on the team plus a red shirt guy that had red shirted, and we would beat the first team every day. Just beat them every day. That was just my release. And then I went on and played the next year and became player of the year in the conference. But they don't care. That's my opinion. Now, they might say that they care. It's like a set of rules for one team and a different set of rules for another team. Or the big boys, they don't get punished nearly as much. We're talking $50. And I said, I needed it for a phone bill. I didn't demand it, I just asked for it and he gave it to me. So but they took that and ran with it. And they said, your career, you can still go to school, but you don't get to play anymore. So I didn't get to play that junior year. I had to play. That's why when they see my stats, a lot of people think it had to do with academics. It had nothing to do with academics at all. So I would have loved to have known to see what my numbers would have been like had I played all 4 years. But probably, barring injury, would have probably been the all-time leading scorer, all-time leading rebounder. But it wasn't so much that, because eventually somebody's going to break all the records. But it's just the fact of how they tried to destroy my life. Probably wanted me to quit school, but I wasn't going to do that.
So you were still allowed to practice your junior year with the team?
Every day.
So the NCAA still kind of allowed that, even though they wouldn't let you play?
You could practice. You could practice, go to class. Couldn't travel with the team, which I didn't want to travel anyway. And but I practiced every day. Didn't miss one practice. And that was my release. That was my release. And I'll never forget the first game my senior year. I was so nervous. It kind of reminded me of 2 years ago, Shemi Ojule's first game, and I mentioned that on the air. I know what he was going through because he had sat out for 2 years because he transferred in. And I was just flat nervous. I mean, I was ready, I was in great shape, but you just don't know what to think. You sat out for the whole year. I remember my sister said, I was having like heartburns, and she said, just get a beer and just chug it. Just drink as much as you can. I don't know if that helped, but I did it anyway. But it was early. Early in the day. No, not right before the game. This was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But I forgot who we played that first game, but it ended up okay. But the NCAA, those 4 words, when I hear them, I just wish I could say what I really want to say to some of those men, but as it turned out, it worked out okay.
So I guess fast forwarding now to 2012, when you mentioned earlier that you got inducted into the SMU's Hall of Fame for athletes, what was that like, that experience, being honored, even though you only got to play 3 out of the 4 years?
Great. It was great. I mean, it was a great night at the Hilton Anatole. Some friends were there. Someone gave me a big suite to use to hang out with my friends. It's about as big as this room, and that was fun. That was just really fun, just to share it. Share it with my parents are deceased, but I was able to share it with real close friends and my sisters, my brothers, some of my teammates, and that was. Once again, there's always some kind of controversy somewhere. It had nothing to do with me. But that night was fun. The night was fun, beautiful dinner. Louis Kelcher went in. One thing I didn't like about it, they give you 4 minutes. I've been trying to get into the Hall of Fame all this time. You're gonna give me 4 minutes. It's gonna take me 3 minutes just to thank people, before I say what I wanna say. But not that they were gonna pull the mic, but I still tried to stay as close to the 4 minutes as I could. And then, of course, Louis Kelcher's last, and he was like the All-American, played with the San Diego Chargers. He took about 1.5 minutes. So if I'd have known that, I could have said, let me have Louis' minutes, and I could have gone longer. But the negative part about all of that was something happened with Steve Orsini and Gerald Turner. I don't know what. But this event took place on a Friday. On Thursday, Steve Orsini was fired, the athletic director. So I guess a lot of people say, why couldn't he have waited until Monday? Or what? If Steve would have been up on stage with us, he and Dr. Turner would have known what was going on. We might not have known, but the fact that it was just kind of a slight downer on the night, because Steve and I get along great. I get along great with President Turner, but it was just, again, I don't know what led to it other than different philosophies, but that part was a little disappointing. But overall, because when you think in Hall of Fame, I guess you kind of look at that as being best of the best, or at least in somebody's eyes, best of the best. You showed your consistency, did what you needed to do, help continue to put the school on the map, that sort of thing. So, because that's not promised to you. It's really not promised to you. And, I was just glad I was able to. I mentioned Doc Hayes. Doc Hayes went in the same time. Doc Hayes, a former coach, that was long before me. I never got a chance to meet him, and I acknowledged his family, saying that I would have loved to have known Doc Hayes, just to be a sponge and listen to him. Jim Krebs, also one of the other guys that's got their jersey retired. I never got a chance to meet Jim Krebs. So when you talk about SMU basketball, Doc Hayes and all the success he had, Jim Krebs, a first-team All-American that played for the Lakers, I never got to meet them and sit and talk to them. And I just wondered how much more it would have helped my career had I just got a chance to just be a sponge with those guys. But the night itself was very good. Didn't overdo it. I did have some really nice wine that night, but I didn't have to drive anywhere. I just had to catch the elevator. So that was good. Everything worked out.
So, and even coming up, I guess, to 2017 and the scholarship that's been named after you, can you tell me a little bit about that and the process that you went through to get that?
I had nothing to do with it. Somebody cared enough about me to do it, and they just wanted to help the next child, And I mentioned that when I talked to middle school students. I said, guys, you never know who's watching you, who cares about you. Now, someone cared enough about me to do this, and who knows, maybe some of you might have an opportunity to use this one day once you get out of high school. But I was totally blown away. I was doing the game with Alan Stone. I forgot where Rich Phillips was. I think Rich Phillips was coming back from a football game. So I was doing the game. So we recapping halftime. We recapping the first half at halftime, and Dr. Turner motions me to the middle of the court. I said, I'm doing the game. I've got headsets on, okay? So he come on out there. Alan knew what was going on. I didn't. Alan Stone, the play-by-play guy. So he just said, this endowment, perpetuity, which I didn't even know what perpetuity meant at the time. I do now, And I'm just glad they didn't have me to say anything, because I was blown away. Because, when you're getting ready to say something, there are times you get choked up. And I know I would have gotten choked up. I mean, I got slightly choked up even during the Hall of Fame speech. And so I'm glad I just rotated around and thanked everybody, just waving. But it was shocking. It really was shocking. So the fact that someone thinks enough, not only of me, but more importantly, the school, because someone will get a chance to use that, or some children will get a chance to use that, and hopefully, they would take full advantage of it.
Do you know if it's already in effect or when it goes into effect?
I have not. I haven't spoken with Brad Cheeves and any of those guys, but I plan to find out. I certainly want to know what's going on, because if it has to do with me, I'd like to have a little say in it. I don't have to be 100%. But I would like to see what's going on and how it works, how much of an input I will have on it. But I certainly have intentions of having something to do with it.
So talking earlier, you said you're around SMU a lot and you see all these buildings springing up. How has this university changed to you since the time that you've been here all the way up until now? And what improvements or what future improvements do you
Well, I see all the improvements. I mean, first of all, we didn't play football on campus. We either played at the Cotton Bowl or we played at Texas Stadium. Obviously, Texas Stadium is not standing. Ownby Stadium is now Ford Stadium, but we didn't play at Ownby Stadium. But I mean, again, when we were walking up, I mean, these buildings are just. I got one or two ways I come to the football game and to the basketball game. I park in the garage, I walk in. But I had no idea these buildings were just majestic. They really are. And I really hope kids realize it. I hear all the time how beautiful this campus is from people that never been here. And when they see it, they're blown away. Not to say that all the other campuses are not like this as well, but I would have gotten lost. I would have needed a road map. I would have needed GPS. I don't know how GPSs work when you're walking. I use them when I'm driving, but just the landscaping, the building itself, and they're still building. They're really still building. But I'm a basketball fan, so watching Moody be redone, that was just phenomenal. And but I see all these buildings, but I'll keep going back to Moody. Today we played UConn. That was the first game that we played here. It was cold outside, but I was so nervous. I had a towel with me the whole time. I couldn't stop sweating. I really couldn't stop sweating. And to see that place loud, crazy, the fans losing their minds, had nothing to do with the beer and the wine, I'm sure, but just the fact that it was just loud. And we playing a big school, the big bad UConn Huskies coming to town, and we destroyed them. And I love that. I totally love that. Absolutely.
Speaking of Moody, did you ever have any apprehension, now that the old Moody's been renovated and that's just the place that you played and you spent so much time in? How does it feel, having an essentially new building that's Moody now?
I'm the type of person, I'm proud of it, proud of, what they've done. It was way past time. It really was. But it's not just a building. People are not too excited about coming to play us here because they know just how we play so much better here. Now, we did have some hiccups this year with the injuries, but the building is one thing. The fact that we have a program, that we have players that people like to come and see. Again, like I said earlier, I've been there where it was 1,500 people, 1,200 people. Now 7,000 people sound like 20,000 people. When I see people doing this, covering their ears, I love that. I literally I'm talking grown people. I don't mean just kids. And more importantly, the students are back. When Larry was here and they're lining up to get tickets, or sleeping out to get tickets, and Larry bringing them donuts and coffee. That was, what? Coffee? Sleeping out? This is not Duke. This is not Kentucky. This is SMU. And they were doing it. And a lot of people told me, I can't get tickets. So that part I like more than anything else. It's good to have the building, the bricks and mortar, but if you don't have a team, we're back down to 2,000 fans, and that's not what we want. We want people there, and I know everybody wants to say, I was in the building with former President Bush, or I was in the building with Tony Romo, or Mark Cuban even came to a game. Never seen Mark at a game, but he was at a game. Jerry Jones was at a game, the mayor, all of these people coming to the game, a lot of Cowboy players, Maverick players. That's all good, but the fact that it's fun, the guys are balling. And I've seen some games over the last few years that are just, back in the Nick Moore days, or when Jordan Tolbert almost broke my rebounding record. I was actually doing that game on ESPN3, and I was pulling for him. People say, he'll need but 2 more. I say, let him get it. And I don't know I forgot who I was doing the game with. And it's like, if he gets it, I'm gonna stop the game. Or not stop the game, but at the timeout, I'm gonna take this headset off and walk out in the middle of the court and give him a hug. Because the record's been there for so long. Those are the kind of things I like to see. It's good to have that big, pretty building with all the suites and all the pretty people, but I like to see guys balling. I like to see people losing their minds because we got a program that people can be proud of.
So you're happy with the way the culture has been changing on this campus in terms of athletics. And you say you're not so involved with just the campus life here, but from your observations of just being around, how has it changed?
I don't know if it has, because it's kind of hard to compare it, because even from the time I was here 40 years ago to now, it's hard to say what really changed, because once I came back from playing pro ball or playing overseas, the time I mainly spent was a little bit of time on the boulevard at the football games, to mainly just Moody. So again, I'm not in all these beautiful buildings and the new student center and all of that, or just hanging out on the campus. Just when we were walking up today, I probably should, just to hang out and just put some sun on my face. But it just seems like people are relaxed, but you never know what's going on in their heads. You just never know. Unfortunately, the world is different now, much different. And again, I'm not sure if it's any better now than it was 40 years ago, shortly after Jerry Levias came through, back in the 60s. But, it just seems relaxed. People are willing to help, nice, smile to you, say hello, even if they don't know you, just be comfortable. And that's what we need more of that. We need more of that. I hope that is changed for the better. But like we said earlier in the interview, I didn't run across drama, but I know there was drama. And I know there was drama before I got here. There's been drama since I've left, but none of it came directly at me. But if it affects this campus, it affects me. If it affects this school, it affects me. If it affects somebody that I know that went to school here, that affects me. So even though it's not directly at me, I'm an SMU Mustang for life. I've been a Mustang for all my life. My high school was the Roosevelt Mustang, so it's kind of hard to get away from the Mustangs.
Awesome. Thank you so much for spending the time here with me. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.